Hello again, you are welcome to Project Procurement Management class. Project Procurement Management includes all the processes required to acquire products and services from outside the performing organization. And normally this will generate contracts, which is a mutually binding and a legal agreement that obligates the seller to provide a certain product or service, and also obligates the buyer to provide some monetary consideration. Procurement management could therefore be seen as managing and administering contracts. Now, a contract is just one form of agreement, and agreements could come in so many forms, but the commonest form we see is the written agreement, which is commonly referred to as a contract. We'll be looking at the processes involved in procurement management. But in the real world, terms such as a seller, which we'll be using in our course, is referred to as a contractor or subcontractor. In most organizations, we have a department that is responsible for handling procurement, but always we should bear in mind that a project manager is ultimately in charge of procurement on his project. Now, this department could be called the procurement department. It could also be called the purchasing department. But because the project manager is in charge of his project, he must be familiar with all aspects of procurement, even though procurements are usually handled by the procurement department. And therefore, we could have someone called a procurement manager on a project who is different from the project manager. Now, these are the processes we'll be looking at. We will be going through 4 procurement management processes. We'll start with planned procurement management. Then we'll move on to conduct procurements. Then we will look at control procurements. And then finally, close procurements. These are the 4 processes that a project manager or a project management team will go through to effectively manage procurements on a project. Then this will apply to projects that require procurement. Some projects may not need procurement at all, and so these processes will not be necessary on such projects. Our first process, planned procurement. What is this process about? It's a process of making purchasing decisions and identifying potential sellers. Basically, that is what this process is about. We want to decide whether we want to purchase certain goods or services, or we want to do it internally. So it involves deciding whether to acquire external support, what to acquire, how to acquire it, and then when to acquire it. All these are done in this process, which is called planned procurement management process. There are some inputs we'll make use of, which will be references that will be necessary for our planned procurement management process. And this includes the project management plan, then our requirements documentation, our risk register, activity resource requirements, our project schedule, activity cost estimates, our stakeholder register. Then we have enterprise environmental factors, internal or external, that could influence the success of our project. Then organizational process assets, Those are internal company documents that could aid us in project planning. What tools and techniques can we employ to effectively plan procurement? We have the technique called make or buy analysis. This helps us to decide the economic benefit of either doing the work ourselves or going to procure from an outside source. Then we will need expert judgment. We could make use of expert opinion to decide on procurements. We could make market researches. And of course, meetings are important tools for planning, not only procurements, but planning generally on projects. It is important to understand that since procurements will lead to contracts, we need to understand the various forms of contracts that are in existence. We have basically three forms of contracts. We have the fixed price contracts, and there are various variations of the fixed price contracts. We have a purchase order, we have a fixed price incentive fee, we have a fixed price award fee, and then we have a fixed price economic price adjustment. That will be for contracts that span a number of years where we know economic conditions will not remain the same, and so we introduce a certain clause to cater for the economic variations that could affect pricing. Then the second form of contracts is called a cost reimbursable contracts, and this one, the price is not fixed from the beginning, unlike the fixed price contracts, but the buyer pays the seller after the completion of work, after he submits his cost. And the various forms of the cost reimbursable contracts include the cost contract. We have a cost plus fee, which is also known as a cost plus percentage of cost. Then we have the cost plus fixed fee. We have the cost plus incentive fee. And then we have a cost plus award fee. Now the incentive fee and award fee are all incentive forms of the cost reimbursable contract. The third group of contracts is referred to as a time and material contracts. And these ones contain aspects of both the cost reimbursable and then the fixed priced contracts. Unit labor or material rates such as cost per hour, cost per meter. These are examples of time and material contracts. So we could see a fixed cost per meter, which looks like a fixed price contract, but yet the amount of meters is not yet determined, and so it is reimbursable at the end. What will be our outputs of land procurement management? We will come up with a procurement management plan which will guide the rest of our procurement management processes. Then it will be important to define a procurement statement of work. We will come up with our make or buy decisions, and then it's important to prepare procurement documents, which will include a request for proposal, invitation for bids, request for quotation, etc. Then we must identify how we are going to select our source. Procurement planning could generate change requests and this will further on trigger updates to our existing project documents to reflect the new changes. Our next process is a conduct procurement process. And this is the process of obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. It means that from planned procurements, we have decided to procure. So we send out advertisements and we ask sellers to respond. Inputs will include our procurement management plan, our procurement documents, our source selection criteria, and then we could have a pre-qualified seller list and also our seller proposals that we'll be evaluating to select a seller. All are inputs to this process. Further inputs are project documents, the make or buy decisions that we arrived at during procurement planning, our procurement statement of work, a description of the work we want to procure. We have teaming agreements with some organizations that we have already established agreements with now, and then we will make use of our organizational process assets, which could include a list of prospective and previously qualified sellers, information on relevant past experience with sellers. Tools and techniques which will be made use of during the conduct procurement process. We will hold bidder conferences, meetings between the buyer and the prospective sellers before bid submission. We'll be making use of proposal evaluation techniques to help us evaluate proposals from sellers. We could depend on independent estimates to be able to judge the price being quoted by potential sellers. We could involve experts. Now we'll make use of advertising actually to get seller responses to our procurement demands. There are various analytical techniques that could be employed. And finally, procurement negotiations is so key to select a seller and arrive at a good price for both parties. Outputs. We will arrive at the list of our selected sellers or a seller, and then we will enter into agreements with them. And let's remember, our agreements must contain a statement of work, schedule, baseline pricing, payment terms, acceptance criteria, warranty, product support, penalties, and termination procedures. Then we will develop a resource calendar showing when resources will be available to work on our project. Because we've done procurements, there could be change requests to our projects, and then our project management plan will need to be updated, and other project documents, maybe the requirement documentation, risk register, could all be updated as a result of the new changes on our project. Our next process is the control procurement process. This is the process of managing buyer-seller relationships. Now, this buyer-seller relationship has been established in the conduct procurement process. So we manage the relationship, we monitor contract performance, and we make changes when necessary. And remember that the legal nature of contracts makes it imperative that both parties are aware of the legal implications of actions taken when administering procurements. One party cannot alter the terms and conditions of a contract. A contract could only be modified mutually by the agreement of both parties. Let's look at our inputs to the control procurement process. Our procurement documents, they will serve as supporting documentation for the administration of procurement. Our project management plan is a key reference. Our agreements, basically our contracts. Then the performance reports, referring to the reports being sent to us from the seller concerning how far is going on with our work. Approved change requests. This could actually lead to the modification of the terms and conditions of the contract. Work performance data. Examples are incurred costs and payments made to the seller. Then we could have seller work performance reports. All these are references with which we can control our procurements. And the tools and techniques that we could make use of. We could have a contract change control system, which could be a system that defines the process by which modifications could be made to our contract. And we will undertake procurement performance reviews, seller's performance in comparison to what was agreed in the contract. We will be holding inspection and audits. This is to verify compliance on the part of the seller to agreed work processes. Performance reporting inform management about how effectively the seller is meeting contractual objectives. Payment systems, claims administration, records management system. Now, what will we seek to achieve? What will be our outputs of the control procurement process? We will be receiving work performance information from the seller, and we could be updating a number of documents on our project. We could update our organizational process assets. This could be in the form of new lessons learned and useful information that could be of use for future projects. And there could be change requests that could arise out of controlling procurements. And when there are changes, definitely there will be the need to update our project management plan and other project documents. Our final process is to close procurement. And this is the process of bringing the procurement process to an end. It involves verification of work and deliverables, finalizing open claims, updating records, and archiving information for future use. The terms and conditions of the contract usually stipulate the specific procedures for contract closure. There could be an early termination of the contract by mutual agreement or from the default of one party. In summary, procurements are closed when a contract is completed or when a contract is terminated before the work is completed, and contract must be terminated mutually. Our inputs to this process. Now, the project management plan, and you should remember the project management plan is a bigger plan that is guiding the whole project from beginning to end, and contains also the procurement management plan. So in the project management plan, we have guidelines for handling procurements, even including how to close procurements. And then our procurement documents, all the documents that we have prepared during the planned procurement stage through to the conduct procurements, we will make use of them as references to be able to decide that it is time to close our procurements. Tools and techniques that we could make use of to close procurements. Procurement audits, and these are a structured review of the procurement process. We want to identify what went right and what went wrong during the whole procurement process. That is why we'll undertake a procurement audit. We'll be doing procurement negotiations, and we should understand that settlement in court is the least desired option in handling procurements. We want to be able to mutually agree on issues rather than going to courts to settle issues. They will be handling a records management system. Outputs of our close procurement process. Now, there could be close contracts, which are part of the close procurements, and then we could update our organizational process assets. Thank you.